Hello everyone, and welcome to Scary Tales. Tonight, we have some spine-chilling stories from students who have faced terrifying experiences. So, find a cozy spot, dim the lights, and get ready. Let the stories begin. Story number 1. I never imagined my university project could lead to such a nightmare. I was always the diligent type, focused, determined, and eager to succeed. The project for my final year was crucial. It wasn't just a simple assignment. It was a chance to prove myself. My classmates and professors would remember this project. It had to be perfect. I had spent weeks working on it, perfecting every detail, ensuring every element was just right. It was supposed to be a reflection of my skills, a culmination of everything I had learned during my years at university. I worked late into the nights, consumed by the project, making sure that my presentation would stand out. Everything was ready. The slides, the research, the data. All that was left was to present it in front of the class and my professor. The day of the presentation came, and my nerves were on edge. I arrived at the classroom early, setting up my laptop and ensuring that everything was in order. As the students filed in and took their seats, I felt the weight of the moment. I was about to give the presentation of a lifetime. It was my time to shine. The room quieted as the professor called my name. I stepped forward, clicking through my slides with confidence. The project was coming together perfectly. I explained each part. Becky, my voice steady, though I could feel the nervous tension in my chest. But then something strange happened. When I clicked to the next slide, it wasn't the one I had prepared. The screen flickered, and a completely different video began to play. A video I had never seen before. My heart dropped into my stomach as the grainy footage filled the screen. It was disturbing, unnerving. The video showed a series of images, none of which had anything to do with my project. The images were dark, unsettling, and the music in the background was eerie, almost like a warning. It was as though someone had hacked into my presentation and replaced it with this horror. I froze in shock. The entire class was staring at me, and I could hear whispers of confusion and laughter from the students. I fumbled with my laptop, trying to stop the video, but it wouldn't respond. I felt my face burn with embarrassment as I stood there, powerless. This wasn't part of my plan. The video continued, showing unsettling images that made no sense. Cryptic symbols, disturbing faces, flashes of light. The more I tried to stop it, the worse it got. I looked up at my professor, who seemed just as shocked as I was, his brows furrowed in confusion. He quickly approached me, but it was clear he had no idea how this had happened. It wasn't just a technical glitch. Someone had deliberately done this. Someone had sabotaged me. Finally, the video ended, but the damage had been done. My classmates were whispering, some of them laughing, others looking at me with pity. I felt humiliated. My stomach twisted in knots as I tried to regain my composure. The professor motioned for me to end the presentation, and I quickly packed up my things, barely able to look anyone in the eye. I left the classroom, my mind racing. Who could have done this? Who could have gotten into my laptop? As I walked down the hall, I felt a sinking sensation in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random prank. Someone had targeted me. But why and how? The next day, I sat in front of my laptop, trying to piece together what had happened. I checked my files, but everything seemed normal. The presentation was still there, just as I had left it. There was no sign of any tampering, yet I couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that lingered in the back of my mind. That's when I found the message. It wasn't in the form of an email or text, but hidden in the file properties of my project folder. I clicked on it, and a small note appeared. This is what happens when you mess with the wrong person. I recoiled in horror, my hands shaking as I read the words. Who was this person? What had I done to deserve this? I tried to make sense of it, but I couldn't. There was no explanation, no hint as to why someone would want to ruin my life like this. I tried to move on. I had no choice but to face the consequences of the ruined presentation. I spoke to the professor, explaining that it wasn't my fault, that someone had sabotaged my work. But he was unsympathetic. The damage was done, and I had no proof to back up my claims. I could feel my future slipping away as I watched my chances of a good grade vanish before my eyes. That evening, I received a call. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated but answered anyway. The voice on the other end was cold, almost robotic. You shouldn't have gone back to your project. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as the voice continued. You've been warned. The call ended abruptly, leaving me in stunned silence. I knew without a doubt that whoever was behind this was watching me. They had been following my every move, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The fear of not knowing who or why only made everything worse. The next few days were filled with anxiety. I couldn't focus on anything else. Everywhere I went, I felt like someone was just out of sight, watching me. The unsettling feeling that someone knew everything about me, that they were just a step ahead, never left. Then, one night, I found something else. A photo slipped under my door. It was a picture of me, taken from behind, in the library. It was clear that someone had been there, watching me, capturing my every move. The fear that gripped me was suffocating. I couldn't escape it. I tried to report everything to the authorities, but they couldn't help me. The trail had gone cold, and no one seemed to care. The professor refused to give me another chance, and my classmates had long since forgotten about me. I was left alone, consumed by the fear that whoever had done this was still out there, still watching. I couldn't escape the feeling that this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was personal. Someone wanted to ruin my life, and they weren't going to stop until they succeeded. The worst part, I couldn't figure out who, but I knew deep down that the person behind this wasn't just some random stranger. They were someone I knew, someone close to me, and that thought terrified me more than anything else. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the haunting question echoed in my mind. What had I done to deserve this? Story number 2. I had always been an ordinary graduate student, quiet, focused, and content, with a routine of classes, assignments, and long nights studying alone in my small apartment. But all of that changed when my backpack went missing. It wasn't a particularly exciting day when it happened. It was just another afternoon on campus, and I was on my way to grab a coffee before heading home. The small cafe near the library was always packed with students, the kind of place where everyone blends into the noise of the crowd. I grabbed a corner seat, placed my backpack on the chair next to me, and settled in with my phone and laptop. I didn't think much of it. That was until I reached for my backpack to leave, only to find it gone. At first, I thought I must have misplaced it. Maybe I had left it at the counter, or someone had moved it by accident. But after searching the entire cafe and asking around, it became clear. My bag had been stolen. My heart sank as I realized what was in it. My laptop, which contained all my work, notes for upcoming exams, and personal files that I could never replace. It wasn't just the items that mattered. It was everything I had poured my time into for the past year. I reported the theft to the staff and campus security, but deep down, I knew it was hopeless. Thieves don't just return stolen property. I tried to shake off the panic, telling myself I could make do without it. But something inside me nagged at me. Something wasn't right. That night, as I sat in my apartment, I couldn't concentrate. My thoughts kept drifting back to the backpack. I kept thinking about the strange feeling that had washed over me when I realized it was gone. It was more than the theft. It was like someone had been watching me. I felt an inexplicable sense of unease, but I dismissed it. I was being paranoid, I thought. The days that followed only fueled the growing sense of dread. I had replaced the most essential items, like my laptop and notebooks, but my mind was preoccupied. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't something I could explain, not to anyone else, and certainly not to myself. I began noticing small things that seemed off. For example, my apartment door, which I always locked before bed, would sometimes be slightly ajar in the mornings. My kitchen light would flicker on and off when no one was around. It wasn't until the third night that I started to hear the sounds. At first, they were subtle. Faint footsteps outside my apartment door. But then it escalated. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sensing someone was in the apartment. A chill would creep over me, as if I wasn't alone. My heart would race, my eyes scanning the dark, but there was nothing, no one. Yet the feeling persisted, and it grew stronger every night. And then the messages started. At first, it was a single note slipped under my door. "I'm watching you." It was written in messy handwriting, and the paper had a strange, musty smell to it. I tried to brush it off as a prank, but the fear that gripped me was real. The next day, a second note appeared. "You shouldn't have ignored me." I was terrified. Someone knew where I lived, knew what I was doing, and was clearly watching me. The worst part, I didn't know who. I didn't know if it was someone from school, a random person who had been following me, or something more sinister. The notes kept coming, each one more disturbing than the last. At one point, they started showing up in strange places, taped to my bathroom mirror, hidden in the pages of my textbooks, or placed inside my shoes. I couldn't go anywhere without feeling that something was wrong, like I was being hunted. But by who? One evening, after returning from class, I noticed something on my desk. A small, old-fashioned key. No note, no message, just a key. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong to anything in my apartment. My stomach turned as I picked it up, examining it closely. There was nothing unusual about it, but the weight of it, the way it felt cold in my hand, sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't know what it opened, but I knew one thing for sure. Someone was inside my life, creeping in where they didn't belong. That night, I stayed awake, terrified to fall asleep. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow seemed like it was coming closer. I finally convinced myself to check around my apartment, making sure all the windows were locked and nothing seemed out of place. But just as I was about to return to my bedroom, I froze. There, in front of me, on the wall next to my bed, was a message. It was written in black marker, bold and scrawled across the white paint. "I'm closer than you think." I gasped, stumbling back. My knees went weak. The message was so fresh, it hadn't even had time to dry. My heart hammered in my chest as I realized I wasn't imagining things. Someone was inside my apartment. Someone was stalking me, and they were getting bolder with each passing day. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept hearing strange noises, the sound of something or someone moving just outside my door. I clutched my phone in my hand, too terrified to call the police. What could I even say? That someone had been sending me creepy notes and leaving messages on my walls. They'd think I was paranoid, delusional. But the truth was, I didn't know who I was dealing with. And that thought terrified me more than anything else. The following week, things took a turn for the worse. I came home to find all my textbooks scattered across my apartment floor, pages ripped out, and the contents of my drawers thrown everywhere. But there was more. On my desk, a small photo had been left, one of me, taken without my knowledge. It was a picture from one of the campus events, taken from behind. Someone had been watching me for a long time, and I hadn't even known it. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left that apartment, staying with a friend for a while. But I knew deep down that this wasn't over. The fear of being watched, of someone knowing more about me than I did, had planted a seed that wouldn't easily go away. Whoever it was, they were out there, and they were watching. I moved to a new place, changed my routine, and took extra precautions. But every time I pass a window or look over my shoulder, I wonder if they're still out there, watching, waiting, and I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. Story number 3. It started as just another night of fun. Danny, Lisa, Mark, and I were college friends, always looking for something exciting to do on weekends. That Friday night, we had no plans until Lisa received a text from an unknown number. It was an invitation to a party in a huge abandoned-looking mansion on the outskirts of town. At first, we were hesitant. The place was far, and none of us had heard of this party before. But curiosity got the better of us, and soon we were on our way. The mansion was massive, almost like a castle, with tall, ivy-covered walls and an eerie glow from its windows. Loud music pulsed from inside, and laughter echoed through the air. The moment we stepped in, something felt off. The people at the party were strangely quiet, speaking in low voices, their faces hidden in dim lighting. But what caught our attention the most was the green mark on their necks. It looked like a bruise, but glowed faintly under the flickering lights. Lisa nudged me and whispered, "What do you think that is?" I shook my head. Maybe some kind of party gimmick, like a stamp to show you're part of the event. Mark, always the bold one, laughed. "Let's just enjoy the night. Free drinks, good music. What's the worst that can happen?" We tried to ignore the weird atmosphere and blended into the crowd. The drinks were strong, and the music was hypnotic. But as the night went on, the uneasy feeling grew. The guests barely interacted with us. They moved gracefully, almost too smoothly, as if they were floating rather than walking. And then there were the whispers, soft, hissing voices speaking a language none of us understood. Danny was the first to notice something truly disturbing. He grabbed my arm, his face pale. "Dude, look." He pointed at a couple standing near the grand staircase. At first, they seemed normal, but then I saw it. Their faces were shifting, their features flickering like a glitching screen. 1 second, they looked human. The next, their eyes were too large, their skin slightly translucent, revealing dark veins underneath. Panic crawled up my spine. "We need to leave," I muttered, but as I turned to find Lisa and Mark, a hand gripped my wrist. I looked up into the cold, unreadable face of a tall man with a deep green mark on his neck. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his voice smooth but unnatural. My heart pounded. "Yeah, we just remembered we have to be somewhere." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Stay, you'll like what's coming next." His grip tightened, and for a moment, I felt my body weaken, as if something was pulling the energy out of me. I yanked my hand away and ran to Lisa and Mark. "We have to go, now." Lisa, already on edge, didn't argue, but Mark hesitated. "Come on, guys. It's just a weird party." Danny shook his head furiously. "No, you don't get it. These people, whatever they are, they're not human." Just then, the music stopped. Silence filled the air, and all eyes turned to us. The guests were no longer trying to hide their true selves. Their faces shimmered, their eyes glowing faintly, and then, in unison, they smiled. Wide, eerie smiles that stretched too far. That was enough for Mark. "Run!" he yelled. We sprinted toward the exit, pushing past the guests. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing against us, slowing us down. The front door was just a few feet away when Lisa let out a sharp scream. We turned and saw a woman gripping her shoulder. Lisa's skin, where the woman touched her, was turning green, spreading in thin, glowing veins. I grabbed Lisa and pulled her free. "We're almost there." With one last burst of energy, we crashed through the front door and stumbled onto the lawn. The moment we crossed the threshold, the heavy feeling vanished. We gasped for air, our bodies trembling. Behind us, the mansion loomed in the night, silent and still. The music, the lights, the guests, everything was gone. It was as if the party had never existed. We piled into the car, speeding away without looking back. No one spoke. No one could. Lisa stared at her shoulder, where the green mark had faded, but left a strange, tingling sensation. "What was that?" she whispered. None of us had an answer. The next day, we searched for the mansion online, but there was no record of it. No party invites, no address, nothing. It was as if it had vanished overnight. But we knew what we saw. We knew what we felt. And we knew that somewhere, those glowing-eyed guests were still out there, waiting for the next group of curious strangers to walk through their doors. Thanks for listening. Goodbye, and have a restful sleep.